Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Here are today's top stories. President Trump saying Ukraine expressed zero gratitude for U.S. efforts to end the war. More on the division and controversies surrounding America's peace proposal. Top U.S. negotiators today discussing their proposed Russia-Ukraine peace plan with Ukrainian and European counterparts in Geneva. A former lead Army intelligence coordinator shares his insights. And the U.S. is stepping up its presence in the South China Sea with carriers on patrol and a new joint task force with the Philippines aimed at countering Chinese aggression. Airports nationwide are gearing up for the busiest Thanksgiving travel rush in 15 years. More than 52,000 flights are set for Tuesday, but major weather systems could cause delays.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
The United States has drafted a 28-point peace plan for ending the war in Ukraine. It contains some proposals which leave Moscow short of fully achieving its stated war aims and would require Ukraine to give up its ambitions to join NATO. Let's take a look at the U.S. peace plan.
Here are the key points from the US drafted peace plan for ending the war in Ukraine. The plan locks in Russia's battlefield gains since February 2022, almost one-fifth of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has previously ruled out gifting Moscow any territory. Ukraine would also have to cede the rest of Donetsk to Russia, an area it currently controls. Russia would not be allowed to garrison that territory, which would become a neutral, demilitarized buffer zone controlled by and belonging to Moscow. Under the plan, Ukraine could not join or be admitted to the US-led NATO military alliance. NATO itself would commit to not expand further, a key Russian demand. Meanwhile, there would be an expectation Moscow would not invade its neighbours. NATO troops could not be stationed in Ukraine, and Kyiv would also be forced to cap the size of its army at 600,000 troops. Kyiv would also have to drop plans to pursue legal cases seeking to prove that Moscow committed war crimes, something Russia denies. Western governments have frozen about $300 billion of Russian assets as punishment for starting the war. Under the US plan, Russia would have to hand over $100 billion to Washington. The money would help rebuild Ukraine, with the US reaping 50% of the profits from that work. Ukraine would also be forced to swallow a bitter pill by not being able to seek reparations for war damage from Russia through the courts.
President Trump posting on Truth Social Sunday that Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for U.S. efforts to end the war, and that Europe continues to buy oil from Russia. He was in office. He added the war is a loss for everyone. Millions of people have died in the conflict. His remark comes as countries are divided over a sweeping U.S. peace plan to end the Ukraine war. Trump wants Ukraine to accept the peace plan by Thanksgiving. Trump said Saturday that the peace plan is not his final offer to Ukraine.
President, is this your final offer to Ukraine?
No, not my
Sir, do you still plan? Sir, do you still plan?
I would like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended.
Senators Mike Rounds and Angus King claim that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told them the plan was not authored by the United States. Senators said they were told the plan was received from an intermediary and is essentially the wish list of the Russians. Rubio pushed back, posting on X that the peace proposal was authored by the U.S. and that it's based on input from both Russia and Ukraine. Rubio is in Geneva today to iron out details of the agreement with the Ukrainian and European security officials. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said today that the peace plan may consider a number of elements critical to Ukraine's interest. He noted that work is underway to ensure all elements are truly effective in achieving the goal of ending the war. Ukraine's allies have criticized the peace plan, issuing a joint statement at the G20 summit that the plan would leave Ukraine vulnerable to attack. They expressed concerns over the border changes in the plan. The statement was inked by countries including the UK, Germany, France, and Canada. Top officials from the US, Ukraine, and Europe gathered in Geneva today to discuss Washington's draft plan to end the war in Ukraine. Here's more.
Today, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he's not convinced a deal acceptable to Ukraine can be reached by that deadline.
Today is Sunday. President Trump's plan is to reach an agreement on Thursday. We are still very far from that. That doesn't mean it's completely impossible to reach, but I'm skeptical whether such an outcome is possible given the current differences.
Merz said he has put forward his own proposal, now being discussed in Geneva, to at least take a first step by Thursday if the full 28 points can't be resolved in time. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also called for revisions to the proposal, saying Ukrainians and Europeans must feel fully represented in any peace plan. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen outlined 3 principles Europe sees as non-negotiable: that Ukraine's borders cannot be changed by force, that its military cannot be reduced, leaving it vulnerable to an attack, and that the European Union must have a central role in the peace deal for Ukraine. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan said he will speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday about ongoing peace efforts and will share the outcome with US and European leaders.
Joining me now to discuss the 28-point peace plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war is Kervin Oakwin, former lead intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army. Kervin has direct experience in U.S.-Russia relations. During the first Trump administration, he participated in an overt anti-Russian campaign and now hosts the geopolitical intelligence podcast This Week Explained. Welcome back, Kervin. The Ukrainian delegation discussing the 28-point peace plan with European and American counterparts in Geneva today. What do you expect to come out of these talks?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Good to see you. I think this is very an important situation that we're seeing here right now. And so, what are we looking at? I think we're looking at typical business practices from a businessman in President Donald Trump, who was giving an ultimatum of a certain date to come to a conclusion of this, knowing full well the conclusion can't be made. But he's getting people to negotiate now. We spent the last few months the states, spent the last few months talking to the Ukrainian side, talking to the Russian side. We couldn't get the two sides to come together and put a plan in place. So now we have a 28-point plan, much like the bullet point plan that we saw in Gaza. And then a forceful rhetoric of you're going to agree to this by Thursday, Thanksgiving. That's something we know President Trump likes to do. He likes these big holidays to present something, but knowing full well that with the sheer magnitude and implications of this conflict, that deal's not going to happen by Thursday. But it's going to get people negotiating, and you're going to have different plans being put out from different delegates, so that at some point the two presidents can come together, that Zelensky and Putin can come together and negotiate in good faith.
Now, critics of this plan have been outspoken about it. We're hearing that senators calling it a Russian wish list. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I want to just ask, how far apart do you think the two parties are on this plan, Russia and Ukraine at this point?
Yeah, I think they're still oceans apart. Look, I'm hearing some within the Russian mill bloggers that Russia will not even agree to this 28-point plan. So I kind of laugh at the fact that people think this is just based off of a Russian wish list. I don't think Russia is wishing to give away $100 billion that they feel was taken from this through various sanctions, and give it to Ukraine for rebuilding. I don't think that was part of Russia's plan. I think what we're seeing here is something that looks more pro-Russia than other deals that Western Europe would have liked to have made. But there's a reason for that. It's to get Ukraine to come to the table. And from a business aspect, this is what happens in negotiations. You offer something you know is not going to be approved by either side if you're mediating, in the hopes that there are a few things that they can start to agree to, and then it does not look like complete capitulation one side to the other. And the big thing here is both leaders have to go back to their people and claim victory when all is said and done.
Now, Kervin, you're saying that what's significant about this is that it's getting people to talk when they weren't there wasn't the kind of urgency perhaps Trump would have liked to have seen prior. So, do you think that these talks could actually go somewhere, or do you think that this could sort of just peter out and then we'll be waiting a few months and then there'll be another moment like this?
I mean, that's the $100 billion question, and recent history tells us that it's the former, right? So, um, I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know what
Sure.
Putin is going to say. I don't know what Zelensky is going to say. I know right now that it is getting delegations to talk to each other, but you have two presidents who honestly do not like each other and have said publicly, whether on podcasts or within their own state media, that they will not sit down with the other person. The other person is a villain. And until they bridge that gap of mistrust, I don't know that we get sincere talks from the two leaders who have to agree to this.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see that if that actually happens. But we've seen a lot of surprising things happen in the Trump administration so far, so who knows? Uh, Now, U.S. senators, coming back to the senators, they're critical of this plan, some of them, and they said Marco Rubio called it a Russian wish list, after which Rubio said it was authored by the U.S. What can you tell us about the origins of this proposal?
Yeah, I think it's something that I always say on the podcast is that two things can be true at the same time. It is a wish list given to the United States that they then took and put a 28-point plan together. Look, this is what's going to have to happen. You will take a wish list from the Russian Federation. You will take a wish list from Ukraine, and you will sort of smash them together in what the mediators think the two sides can agree to. You'll put that on a plan, present it to both sides, and have them debate over what they can accept. They're going to have to accept, look, Ukraine's going to have to accept that their borders have moved. This is not something that we like in modern day society, but it is just a fact. When a war happens and a nation invades another nation and breaches a certain border, at some point that border sticks. Now, I think also Ukraine doesn't like the demilitarized zone because they actually hold that area. So there's going to have to be some talk about that as well. But I think the key point here is going to be you cannot have a redo of the Budapest Agreement from 1994, I believe, where Ukraine was asked they were the third largest nuclear nation, and they were asked to remove all of their nuclear weapons in the promise that they will not be invaded by an adversary. We saw that did not happen. They were not given a security guarantee. They were given basically a promissory note saying, if you are invaded by an adversary, we will come to your assistance in the form of weapons or money or anything, but no NATO 5 style agreements. That's the agreement that Ukraine needs right now. It's the one I'm going to keep talking about everywhere that I talk. And it's the one I think Zelensky needs to push for.
And we're seeing something like that in these 28 points. Do you think what's represented in this plan is enough to be a significant, a meaningful security agreement, or could we end up like we did with after the agreement in '94?
I think the one that's in the plan right now is a guarantee that NATO will react militarily, and I think that what I don't think are vague promises. Not having read, the entirety and all the footnotes within this plan, I won't speak to that. But if there are no tangible, valid, or validated security agreements, NATO 5 style, if that is not in writing, then I think Ukraine should and will walk away from this. So that's something that they're going to need to be pushing on. That's what I hope they're talking about in Geneva right now. And I hope that that's the plan that they push through, understanding, okay, we know our borders have shifted, but we want this security guarantee because we all know what Putin wants. He wants the entirety of Ukraine and NATO, and so Western Europe, NATO, the United States, and Ukraine have to be forceful and say that cannot happen.
Now, if Europe and the Ukrainians don't agree to this plan, then what we're looking at is the United States withdrawing military support, military weapons support, and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Could, say they reject that plan, could Europe back Ukraine to push Russia out of Ukraine and, reclaim that territory from Russia?
Yeah, look, I don't think that Ukraine has a chance right now where it stands to push Russia back as it currently stands. But with the backing of Western Europe, I think Western Europe is going to need to be more forceful in how they're helping Ukraine. Unfortunately, the only way to do this is to put boots on the ground. That's going to involve NATO. That could definitely feed into what Putin actually wants, so that he can start a war with NATO under the auspice that they started with Russia first. But what I think here is if Ukraine says that they're not even going to negotiate by Thursday, and the United States pulls out of their efforts for intelligence sharing, which I would say is even more important than the munitions and the military support that Ukraine is getting right now, I think Europe is going to have to fit the bill. They're going to have to spend extra of what the United States won't spend. And I think that's going to be all part of trying to get everyone to the negotiating table to get something tangible in place here. Ukraine's got to play it very safe. They have got to understand that this could be something where Russia tries to tie them as the one who doesn't want peace, who doesn't want to negotiate. So they have to come out publicly and forcefully say, we are trying to negotiate. What we are seeing here is a Russian Federation that does not want peace.
All right, Kervin Oakman, former lead Army intelligence coordinator, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Stay safe out there.
You do the same. Coming up, President Donald Trump sit down with New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani in a rare Oval Office meeting. NTD's Washington Bureau Chief Steve Lance breaks down their stark ideological divide and the battle over affordability with experts. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The U.S. is signaling a stronger commitment to stability in the South China Sea through a steady naval presence and a new military partnership with the Philippines. Over the weekend, there have been two major developments. First, there's an American carrier strike group operating near the Scarborough Shoal, one of the most contested areas in the South China Sea. And second, the launch of a joint task force designed to respond faster to Chinese aggression in the region. Here's more.
The USS George Washington is now in the South China Sea. It entered through the Luzon Strait last week, taking over as the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group wrapped up operations. Both carriers are nuclear-powered. On Friday, the George Washington Group positioned near the site where two Navy aircrafts crashed last month. Before leaving the region, the Nimitz Strike Group joined Japan and the Philippines for a trilateral patrol near the Scarborough Shoal, a region heavily contested by both Manila and Beijing. China protested the joint patrol and even sent bombers to fly over the area. The Philippines Coast Guard also reported multiple Chinese Navy and Coast Guard vessels surrounding the shoal. At the same time, Washington and Manila are taking a new step to counter Beijing's pressure. U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth and his Philippine counterpart announced a new joint task force aimed at deterring Chinese coercion. The task force will help U.S. and Philippine forces react more quickly to Chinese ships in contested waters and improve coordination during any future crisis. Tensions have remained high for months, with repeated close encounters around disputed shoals. Both countries say this expanded cooperation is meant to re-establish deterrence in one of the world's most critical waterways.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro was taken into federal police custody on Saturday before a planned supporters' vigil near his home, ending months of house arrest. Bolsonaro's lawyer said they plan to appeal the detention order. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro was taken into federal police custody on Saturday, citing an escape risk, before a planned supporters' vigil near his home, that is. In a court decision seen by Reuters, Supreme Court Justice Alexander de Moraes said the gathering outside could undermine police monitoring of Bolsonaro's home. The judge also noted evidence of tampering with the ex-president's ankle monitor the night before. Bolsonaro is appealing a Supreme Court conviction and more than 27-year prison sentence for plotting a coup after losing the 2022 presidential election. He's been under house arrest for months for a separate case alleging he courted U.S. interference with the criminal charges. In a statement, Bolsonaro's lawyers said that what would be a, quote, prayer vigil was guaranteed by the Brazilian Constitution under the right to religious freedom, and that they plan to file an appeal. Bia Kicis, a federal lawmaker from Bolsonaro's party, called his arrest an injustice. The judge's decision to arrest Bolsonaro will be submitted to a Supreme Court panel on Monday for confirmation. Global tensions, including a U.S. boycott, are casting a shadow over the G20 summit in South Africa. Expectations for a strong joint statement on climate action and debt relief remain low. Still, South Africa's president managed to push through a declaration addressing global challenges such as the climate crisis, despite objections from Washington. The South African president said Sunday that the leader's declaration reflects a renewed commitment to multilateral cooperation. Here's more.
South Africa on Saturday began hosting the first ever G20 summit on African soil, but hopes for a strong declaration on climate and debt relief for developing nations are slim. Geopolitical tensions are high, and US President Donald Trump is boycotting the meeting. Washington has rejected South Africa's agenda of promoting global solidarity and helping developing nations adapt to worsening climate shocks, transition to clean energy and to ease debt burdens. The summit is being held in Soweto, a suburb of Johannesburg, infamous under apartheid as a community for black South Africans barred from living in the city itself. Even before President Trump returned to the White House, there were divisions among G20 members over sharing the cost of climate action. Other absentees include Argentina's Javier Milei and China's Xi Jinping. The summit finishes on Sunday. And with the US scheduled to chair the next G20 summit, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa quipped he would hand the G20 presidency to an empty chair.
Coming up, a new study looks into the link between ultra-processed foods and health. We dig deep with a nutritionist after the break. Two possible winter storms could cause chaotic Thanksgiving travel for parts of the U.S. The first system could bring heavy rain to Texas and parts of the Southwest this weekend. Then midweek, a cold front could bring snow to parts of the Midwest, with that same system bringing rain to the Northeast. Here's more.
Airports across the country are bracing for the busy holiday season. The FAA is predicting this to be the busiest Thanksgiving travel period in 15 years.
As we go into the holiday, it's going to be full. It's going to be packed. The airlines are ready. The air traffic controllers are back.
Tuesday is expected to be the peak travel day with more than 52,000 flights. But the weather could cause major disruptions in parts of the country.
From this weekend into early next week, there's one system and then another system moving in.
A large portion of the country could see rain this weekend, with the worst hitting parts of Texas and the southern plains. The second system bringing a cold front, where rain could turn to snow in some areas like Minneapolis as early as Tuesday. This comes as AAA expects a record-breaking 82 million people to travel 50 miles or more next week, with at least 73 million on the roads.
You should not be driving in inclement weather.
AAA spokesperson Aixa Diaz says even a little bad weather can cause delays on roads as drivers hit the brakes. If you are driving, AAA says some of the worst times to travel are Tuesday between noon and 9 p.m., Wednesday between 11 a.m. and 8 p.m., and Sunday between 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
Next, in Kansas City, nonprofits and local businesses are working to provide a Thanksgiving turkey to families in need. This holiday season, the community and its spirit of giving are helping put food on the table. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on their efforts.
The Kansas City chapter of Slow Food USA is stepping up for Thanksgiving. Founder Jasper Mirabelle Jr. was happy to make a donation to buy turkeys for locals in need.
So we donated $5,000 and Max secured 300 turkeys for those who are going to need it, who are going to have a turkey on their plate this Thanksgiving. Doesn't get any better. Makes you feel good.
The donation went to Canby's Markets, which purchased the turkeys from a Kansas City-based grocer that was willing to help out. Canby founder Maxfield Kaniger said the establishment was quick to join the effort.
He was able to get us 300 turkeys without breaking a sweat, and I loved his response was actually, how many do you need? And I said, how many can I get? And he's like, however many you need, I will make work. And that's the kind of response you love to see.
Kaniger says his organization has been distributing tons of food, literally. Being able to provide Thanksgiving birds has made the effort even more rewarding.
We've been averaging about 10,000 pounds of food a day going out to different local organizations. And to be able to add these turkeys into the mix really is wonderful.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A first-person look at a mind-blowing torpedo blast. And a group of farmers go shirtless for a good cause. Let's take a look back at the week's wildest and weirdest stories.
Take a look at the week we had. Incredible video from cameras placed on an unmanned Norwegian frigate showed the moment it was hit by a submarine's torpedo, literally lifting the decommissioned vessel out of the water in a spectacular blast. The POV perspective came courtesy of NATO, which shared video of the military live fire exercise, which was done to verify and flex military submarine might. A group of Illinois farmers went viral for striking sassy poses, and they did it for a good cause. Teaming up with a local photographer and project organizer, they produced a calendar described as a boudoir photo shoot. Money raised from the creative calendar sales will go towards an Illinois farmers' mental health program, which operates a 24/7 confidential helpline for farmers and their families. A rare and spirited interaction between a dolphin and a family of manatees was caught on camera by the most unlikely of photographers, a police officer. A detective and licensed drone pilot with the Bradenton PD in Florida was testing out a new drone as first responder program when he spotted the marine mammal meet and greet in the waters below. He said, as a lifelong Floridian, the surreal sight was a first. Finally, in a first for a Utah animal welfare team, a wild owl that fell into a cement mixer was saved thanks to painstaking rehab efforts. The great horned owl was brought to the Best Friends Animal Society in Utah after being discovered inside of the mixer, partially covered in hardened concrete. For 6 days, the team bathed the sedated owl and meticulously scrubbed the gritty substance from its face, chest, and wing. And owl scowl aside, the bird is now recovering and even making some short flights.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.